Hey, it's Robert with Hush Performance. Today we're going to be working on for some of you guys out there that have a cable transmission, whether it's a Honda B Series, a Honda D Series, front wheel drive, or all wheel drive. Today we're going to be working on an all wheel drive car that I think you guys are going to be totally stoked at. This thing is awesome. It's known as the Dragon Wagon. Well, we built the cable to hydro conversions for the EF Wagon. This car that we're going to be working on today is one of the fastest in the country. Just so happens to be our neighbor. He's coming in today and we're going to be retrofitting a release bearing onto his original all-wheel drive cable D-Series transmission. So you guys out there that want to build your all-wheel drive D-Series, original D-Series cable transmission, we essentially are working on a solution for you guys out there. And you could possibly model off of what Brian has on his wagon as well. We're starting the project off with my mini lathe. If you don't have one of these are actually rather surprisingly expensive from Harbor Freight. I couldn't imagine what they cost outside of Harbor Freight. This is about $1,000. But I use this almost all of the time. So you guys in your garage needing to build cool things, you could do something like this too. So what we're working on right now is this adapter that's going to be sliding into the transmission. What I'm doing is I'm turning down this aluminum stock here, and we're going to be able to, and this right here is going to be our adapter for our clutch lines. Once I'm finished with this, you'll have a better idea of what it will look like. There it is. That's what we built out of our stock. It's our all-wheel drive transmission that we're going to convert to hydraulic. This is the cable arm that would normally actually, we're going to pull this out. And in theory, this thing is going to replace it. And our hydraulic lines are going to attach to that. One side is an EPT fitting, which then will have a hydraulic line attached into that, into a hydraulic bearing. The hydraulic bearing we're using is going to be from Clutchmaster. This right here was built, this one right here is specific to the B Series, but it just so happened to fit the cable all-wheel drive transmission and the cable front-wheel drive B Series transmission. Smells good. Yeah. What kind of fuel is it?
E85.
I noticed this battery box over here right away.
Yep.
How did that end up working for you? Like, what was your deciding factor with that?
It's the fitment and the weight.
Yeah.
So I was trying to keep weight down on this particular car, and with the all-wheel drive, I didn't feel it needed the front bias like the front-wheel drives do.
Sure. All right. So we were having issues, or at least you were having issues with a clutch or the cable or a combination of all of those?
So it's a little bit of everything. So we've been running a single disc, and here in Colorado we seem to be able to hook up and everything was fine. I've been running an ACT single disc, and we actually took it out to Missouri, so she's making a little more sauce down there. And we blew through a clutch. I mean, it took the pads right off the clutch within 2 runs. So I swapped the clutch out up there. We made it through a couple, but it smoked the second one. And I'm like, my goal was to hit 9s on a synchro trans with the single cam, and it's not going to do it on a single. So what we wanted, we had a twin disc in it before, but with the cable setup, it stretches the cable really bad.
Okay.
And I could drive it normal, but I couldn't race it.
Interesting.
It was, when I go to hit the clutch and shift, it was like, it wasn't even there. It just doesn't react fast enough. There's too much slop to it.
I understand.
So
a 1-to-1 would be better, and that's ideally what we're working on right now. So we're going to add the cable to hydro conversion to this, but because it's a cable transmission, we still needed to come up with a way to actuate the slave cylinder.
Correct.
And I believe I've solved those issues. We plan on using a hydraulic bearing on here. Like, if we look at how we would have to adapt a slave cylinder onto that transmission, it gets super complicated. Right. This system will allow us to do this, but it also helps everybody else who has one of these transmissions, and it happens to work on a cable B Series as well. So as far as horsepower and time, like, is there anybody that's matching this in a wagon?
Not a single cam. So there's a couple of K Series guys. I think the fastest is they're in Germany, and of course I'm drawing a blank right now, but they run a K-swap, and they run a 908.
Okay.
And then I think there's a couple of K-series here in the States that have done some 10s, possibly some 9s, but nothing on that transmission or single cam.
Understood.
So
that's neat. So what is your fastest ET then?
this one on this setup is a 1062 at 130.
What is the 60 foot on this?
So my best is like a 144.
That feels good though. And what kind of tires are you using?
So I use M&H 24.5 85s.
Okay. In a 13?
15.
Oh, okay. Yep. Very good. So these are 15 right now too, so it's not too different than this is what the tire looks like.
a little bit taller.
Okay.
Yep.
Very good. And the turbo size, what are you using here?
So this one is currently a 3076.
I love the turbo. Oh, and it's a GTX version too.
Yep.
So that means it's got a billet wheel. It spins a bit faster. Did you ever have just on a regular 3076 without?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope.
So I've had plenty of experience with that. I love that size turbo on a single cam. That is my favorite street car, my favorite turbo, just all around goodness. That's kind of cool that you're using that as well. So did you already tell me the PSI?
So this one made 529 at 30.
Okay.
And we didn't need, I was running 1150 class for PSCA and playing around doing other stuff, so we never needed that power.
Okay.
And then once we got done with that, when we started turning it up and getting faster and faster, I started having the typical single cam head lift.
Okay.
You know, because it's got just your standard drop-in ARPs in it.
Still.
Yep.
Okay.
All that. So the new build that's being worked on right now, so it's all forged internals. We actually O-ring the cylinders. It's DevCon, copper gasket, and then we did the SRT4 studs.
Okay.
So
interesting. The SRT4 studs, are those just slightly bigger but the same bolt pattern?
Yeah. They actually get serted.
Okay.
And they're 11 millimeters, so it goes from the 10 to the 11. A lot more clamping force.
Okay.
Doing that.
That's neat. Who figured that one out? Is that just the old school single cam thing, or?
It's been around for a while. But
okay.
Obviously PFI, that's who tunes everything for me, and so that was the build we came up with. And
they suggested that, or just wanted to see if it would work, and then it did?
They suggested it. That's what they've done before.
Okay.
So
that's neat.
A lot of the big boys, you know, Ellie from MAR.
Okay.
Single cam.
That's what he's doing.
They do the big studs.
Interesting.
And all that. So, yeah, that's, if you really want to make the power and have it stay together, that's what we're doing.
So this one ran right now, but this has issues still?
If I keep it under, say, 25 pounds, it's fine.
Oh, because the head's lifting?
Yep.
Okay.
And if I go over that, it starts to lift. It pressurizes the coolant system.
I see.
It's never popped a head gasket or caused problems, but you'll watch on the maps, especially in fourth, you'll watch the boost come up and it'll hold, and then you'll see it kind of start doing this, and then you watch the coolant pressure, it does the same, it matches.
I see.
So.
Well, this thing's rad. And cylinder head package, what are you doing in there?
That is a stock Z6 head with a Crowler Stage 2 cam. It's got the Faria, or however you say it, it's stainless flat bottom valves, and then Crowler.
And stock size valve? Stock millimeter?
Stock size valves, and then springs and retainers.
From SuperTech or Ferrera as well?
All Crowler.
Oh, Crowler. Well, and did you say it was a Vitara build? Did I miss that?
This is a Vitara build.
Okay.
So this is the P220 or whatever rods, the long rods. So it's not the Speed Factory, they're a notched long rods.
Yeah.
And then the Vitara pistons.
Anyone who's building one of these, they just keep it under 25. It sounds like it would work well for them.
Generally, yeah. Yeah, it's usually like the 450 horsepower mark is when they start.
Well, so then what we're going to do is we're going to test fit. We have a Clutch Masters twin disc. We got set up for it, so we're going to pull the transmission so that we can mate the clutch to this, so that we make sure that we can actuate the clutch. We got to get the pedal assembly out, and it looks like it's going to be relatively easy. It doesn't look like there's a whole lot going on under there.
No.
So it should be relatively easy, so we're going to get started on that. That is cool. I'll have to ask him some questions about how he got the hybrid shifter to work in here. And the brackets actually look all OE, but they're adjustable. So we're either using OEM shifter cables, or, well, it looks like they're hybrid versions too. So maybe he's got the whole hybrid kit on here. That is really neat. I do dig that. All right, these pedals are going to be a dream to remove. Essentially all we need to do on this one is just drop the control arm and then get to the bolts that are holding the pedal assembly on, then we can start bolting on the conversion. Brian made simple work of that. He's running a single disc ACT 6-pocket with a sprung clutch, right? And it didn't last too long. He's going to pull that off and we'll be able to see what that's like. He said this was an LSD transmission using an LSD that you said you got from Whoop-De-Doo. That's what you're saying?
Yeah, it's an M factory from Whoop-De-Doo Racing. Yep.
We're making some serious progress over here on the throwout bearing. This is essentially what our fitting's looking like right now. There are going to be some changes I'll make for future runs, but essentially this is how it's going to look. And so we're end up using a hard line. I thought I was going to be using some stainless braided, but we just couldn't get this angle that we're going to need right here. And so right now what we're fitting is the bearing onto the throwout, the bearing onto the transmission, and we're working on this plug right here. And I believe this is what's going to hold down our bracket that we're going to use to hold it down. So in theory, I believe that the hard line may be sufficient enough to hold the bearing down here, but we're going to add this extra part over here. I thought I was going to hold a brace on this side, but I'm just not going to have enough room, and then not enough room to feed the lines and fittings through it all at the same time. But if I capture this guy over here, it may work. This plug right here is going to snap in on the other side like the rod would have held it in place. But what's going to happen now is this bracket's going to hold this plug. This plug is what's going to hold the bracket. Once the bracket is bolted to the master, the plug's going to hold it to the bracket, and then this plug can't back out because it's going to hit the fittings right there like it is kind of right now. This is the Clutch Masters twin disc with flywheel. It is essentially the same part number for like a hydraulic D-series. Mm-hmm. But to make sure, I had some clutches for Hydro D-series and I fit them on there just to make double sure. So it ended up working out. Because if you were to type in all-wheel drive transmission and Clutch Masters, nothing populates. So just for those, it's just a standard 92 to 2000 Civic spline count, and we've confirmed that for you. As I was pulling it out of the box, it felt relatively light, and it struck my curiosity. This clutch with flywheel is 16.3 pounds. We're going to compare it to the ACT clutch and flywheel. My suspicions were correct. Essentially 23 pounds. That is a significant difference, especially with rotating mass. That's pretty cool. Arts and crafts time. The plug is cut, and what we're working right now is that bracket. So maybe this makes a little bit more sense than what we did here. So what I'm trying to do right now is a line where the bearing would hit on the back side of that bracket. And what I think I'm going to do is thread the bracket. Coming around here was just too much interference, and it was a weird angle which required some extra bends. But going from the back of the bearing looks like it's going to work out well for us. So there's only one bend and everything. It's only a 90-degree bend. Pretty simple. And what I'm going to use now to align that hole right there, and basically all we're doing is you're trying to find the pickup points that we can draw into CAD, and I'll use this paper as a template. But I have these punch sets, and what this will do right here, it'll go right into the center of that hole, and there is a punch end on the end. So what I'll do is just stick it in there, and then I'll strike it with my hammer or dead blow, and then I'll have the point that I need. And then the pickup points are there, and I'll be able to design the way that this is going to look a little better than just this square box in CAD. Brian's got his conversion bolted on his pedal assembly. And just like our CRX assemblies, it bolts on essentially the same thing, but this is specific to the Wagon. The Wagon's just different enough to where it requires its own conversion. And it has like that offset extra tab there that our other EFs would have, but the offset is because of the Wagon. Right now he's working on where he's going to mount the reservoir. He's got a lot of stuff going on that was already pre-existing, but fortunately the reservoir that we have now, I constructed it there so where we can essentially clock this in any direction that we want the bottom end. So we can move it and swing it over here, but it looks like he found a spot, and this is where you're wanting to put it up here? Yep. Is that where I'm seeing it? Okay, so what we're going to do with this one is traditionally the instruction will have you remove the cowl so you can get back in behind there, drill the hole, add your bolt, and then there's a lock nut that will come on there. But in this case, we are here in my shop and we have the ability to add a rivnut, which then would make it easier. That's not something that you guys would normally have at home, but we have them here, and it's just a nice addition so he can just take it on and off at will whenever he needs to in the future. I believe it's done. We spent most of the day working out this bracket, trying to essentially figure out what we were going to do for a bracket to hold it down, hold it in place. This plug worked out. I end up taking a lot of material off so that we can get this nut in there, so it will work out. You might need a crow's foot to get in here to tighten this up, or a short 1/2 inch if this is this, if like we release this kit, if we're using this style nut here, you may, but you know, I could in the future turn this into a like 2-part, like a single. I'm not sure if that we need 2 pieces, but we do need the crush washer up there. I do have to take this back out. I'm gonna have to plug this side. I thought that this was the bearings were NPT, like an 1/8 inch NPT, but they're actually 3/8 by 24. And inside there is a bubble flare. So I suppose I could use a single bubble flare 3/8 fitting that goes all the way in there. I suppose I could do that in the future. That would reduce 2 different fittings, so I could make this one solid. We probably should do that perhaps. But at either rate, I don't have any plugs on this side, so I'm going to use one of these fittings that I have here. I'm going to set it on that, but weld the end, and that will plug it. So we'll have one line that feeds this whole thing, and then the fitting that we have on the other side will bleed the whole system on this side. He got the hole drilled out. He did a really good job. Right there. Okay. And that's a 10 millimeter, and that's 10 millimeter based off of the size rivnuts I have. So depending on the type of rivnut that you use, could change the diameter of your nut. But essentially what we're gonna do is this rivnut threads on the end of this tool, just like that, and we'll bottom it out just like that. And this is how simple it is. You'll stick this whole thing into wherever your hole is, and you'll make it flush with the rim or the bead of that rivnut. So it's flush, just pull the trigger, and there it is. Simple. This is pretty much our kit for the D series, all-wheel drive, L3 transmissions. It would not surprise me that this will also fit the front-wheel drive L3s. It wouldn't surprise me that it fits the B series cable. However, we have not tried that yet, but in time we will. This is still a prototype, and I'm actually happy with this. This took me about 12 hours to do today, and I'm happy with the results so far. You're going to gut this out. You're going to take the original cable, you're going to take the original cable, clutch arm, fork out, the throwout bearing. It's going to be gutted. You're not going to be reusing anything that's in there, but don't get rid of it because they're hard to find and you might need it again. Or there could be somebody that has a broken clutch fork spring and they need it, and those are discontinued. So make sure to keep that on, and maybe let somebody local to you know that they got one of those available because they might need it. Our bracket bolts on to the back side. Traditionally it bolts onto the front, but to make it all work, it's on the back. So make sure that the bracket's on first. Okay, this also is going to require a shim that will be provided with the kit. And we're just going to drop the bearing in there. And I'm just making sure that the shim is inside the conical space there. Okay, so now that that's in there, we'll have our plug. We're going to add that. Here we go. There, the plug's in, and that's the bracket and the plug. That's how that's going to work. But what I like about this is it lets me clock. I should be able to clock it a little bit. Now we'll add our feed line, This one's the non-welded. Possibly the kit that you'll get will have the correct plug. We had to modify a fitting that we had, and this thing like barely fit. So I noticed that I am able to clock this a little bit because it's got like a little cam fitting on the other end, and that allows me to get this in there a little bit to get it started, and then I'll twist it back, and I should be able to get my socket on there and tighten it up now. Tighten it snug. Okay, to get this socket on, there was a combination of like twisting the bearing and then pushing back on the plug so that the plug goes back into its little pocket there, and that's what allowed me to get the socket on. So you may need to do that as well. Okay, then with your little small pry you can twist it back into location at one point. Okay, but we'll still need to get this fitting on there, so just keep that in mind. But before this line goes on, make sure you add the plug, and again, that plug may be available. So to fit that, I'm going to have to clock it back. Okay, and then start the plug on this side. Alright, this part could be one of the more challenging. We got to get these two connected, and it may look a little bit different by the time you get one, but we're going to start it and drive it all the way through the tunnel, and then it will meet on the other side. But this one could be a little longer, and what we're looking for is this right here, and it's like wanting to slide around, and actually I think I have a solution for that. Right now I'm going to stick a magnet down in there to try to find it, bring that, there it is. Okay, and so we want to make sure we hold on to that. Okay, and then we'll spin our fitting onto it. Okay, our fitting is spun onto it now, and so this is where we'll tighten this right now. And then we'll be able to just push this back in there. The bearing and fittings are attached. We're going to put the transmission back in there. The twin disc clutch from Clutch Masters is on. There was a lot of measurements that we did. Hopefully we did everything right. And we're going to stab this guy now. And while I was working on that, he was working on the install of the conversion bracket inside here. We still got to finalize some stuff in there, but with it all gutted like this, it definitely will make it easier to install. Alright, we're prepping to add fluid. We got all the lines attached. The transmission's up, the lines are attached, and we're waiting to put it all back together just in case we have to take everything back apart, because that would be sad. Either way, it's going to be sad if we have to take it back apart. But anyways, we're going to add the fluid here. I believe we have everything tightened up underneath, and hopefully it goes smooth. So like I mentioned, the fluid's going to flow through. I have to tighten up the bleed screw on the banjo bolts down there. And once we get fluid started, we probably have to pump it a couple of times, but I'll most likely just use my pneumatic bleeder, get on here and try to just draw as much fluid out. So wish us luck. Is that we have all the pedal, and it feels amazing. The clutch does disengage. We essentially put the engine into gear. We'll put the transmission into gear and then rotated it, and then I'd push on the clutch, and then the transfer case would stop spinning, vice versa. So it feels good. But while I'm in here, I wanted to point out the shifter that he's got in here. This is a hybrid K-series shifter, and he said that this was a TSX style, but he was also using hybrid racing RSX cables. And so to make this work with his setup, he added some stuff. He had to make a part on the end of one of the transmission ends, and their cables, like the connections, can change. They can spin in and out, and he was telling me he had to change one of them, which I do know that the
TSX style. Shifter down here is a ball joint, and so he may have changed that out to that style there, but it's looking like it's not a ball joint. So I don't know exactly what he did at all, but we do know that he added some stuff at the transmission. You were using the stock shifter cable bracket that's on the transmission mount, and then all that you added was that extension there on that cable here. So it's like a coupler right there. It looks like that he added there. So the rods, the joint is the same. It's just that extension.
Yeah, and I had to grind down one of the clips just because of the way it sits.
Oh, I
on
see.
the edge. I had to like kind of shape it out just so it would sit.
I see.
And hold those particular.
So it's not a direct replacement, but it can be done. And this thing shifts amazing. Like if you just like a precise shifter, this is definitely it. You said that it was the other one was like a boat or something. Is that what you said? What was it like shifting? The stock one?
Like rowing a boat.
Like rowing a boat.
One, it's just such long throws.
Oh yeah, that is right. That is true. Okay, now they explain it that way. Mine does feel like it takes forever to shift. So we are so close, but the clutch does feel great. So essentially what we're doing now is just getting it back to running condition just so he can put it on the trailer. But would you at least take it like around the parking lot to make sure that it feels like it works?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so at least we'll do that. And then he said he's got to take it back apart anyway to swap in the new engine, and then there's a test and tune coming up in August. Is that what you're wanting to prep for?
I will test before that, but the big event is August 10th.
Oh, okay. Well, I would love to be able to come out to that event and, you know, be some support. All right, we decided that we're going to do some shifts in the air. He lifted up the back. It is all-wheel drive. The drive shaft is connected, and we cross our fingers. Oh, okay. Like, where's the disengagement and the engagement point?
About 50%.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Like right about in the middle of the stroke? Nice. Okay, as long as we can stay consistent like that, right? Yeah. I can hear the twin disc clang. Cool, man. That's cool. All right. So that's really good. I like the fact that it's halfway because that's the whole point. That's why we adjusted it that way. Seems like he's able to modulate it pretty easily. I don't hear any like bucking, and this is his first time driving with the conversion, and this is also with the bearing, and so it seems as though he's not having any issues. He's driving pretty smooth. That modulation is there. I think that some people that have issues or have had issues or just getting used to it, there might be a lot of bucking because they're trying to find that engagement point. But we spent a good amount of time on this. This is a twin disc also. He's giving a thumbs up. That's a good thing. But there was a thumbs up and a grin. Is that a good thing?
It feels great.
Yeah?
Like it. I was worried about whether or not I was going to have good pedal feel
Okay.
from it, like the feedback.
Okay.
It feels great.
Okay.
I just got to get used to that grabs a lot harder.
Yeah, it seems like you were able to modulate it pretty well, though.
Very much so. But
Yeah.
I think with a little bit of driving and a little tweaking, but yeah, it feels great.
That's awesome.
That, from pushing that clutch with the old cable system when I used to have the twin disc in it for a very short period of time,
Yeah.
that is like 75% less pedal effort.
That's good.
Yeah.
From the ACT? Or you from the other twin
trying
disc?
to do the cable activated twin disc
I see.
versus hydro.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like,
Yeah.
and it would get it right at the very end of the pedal stroke where
Yeah.
it would release.
That's awesome,
So-
man. I'm stoked.
Yeah,
Stoked for
this
you.
is awesome.
All right,
Good.
just a couple of more weeks, right? And then
Yeah.
we'll be at the track. So,
Yep.
all right, guys, stay tuned.